Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hi, everyone. Thank you
Hi.
so much for joining us today. Let's see, we've got three. We're going to kind of be admitting people as they come in, but thank you for joining again. My name is Audrey. I'm the dietitian at the University of Chicago, specifically working in the Celiac Disease Center with Dr. Verma. I deal mostly with pediatrics, but we, of course, are doing a no-bake Nutella gluten-free pie today, which is going to go, which does need to be refrigerated. We were saying earlier, it might not be the most kid-friendly, but we're making it work. Who doesn't like Nutella? So I work with Dr. Verma, who is one of the heads of the Celiac Disease Center, as well as Rachel Lieberman, who is the Celiac Disease Center director. And with us today, we have Lindsay Yeakel, who is our education coordinator. In addition to all things school, 504, college and beyond, to infinity and beyond, really. In addition to all those things, she is also an experienced chef, has experience with in-home dinner and meal preparation skills. So she was also responsible for the certification of restaurant prep kitchens related to all things gluten-free. She could go into much more detail than I could, obviously. But needless to say, she is an expert in all things cooking when it comes to gluten-free and celiac, because it's not the same, right? The way we cook food when we're working with gluten-free food, it changes the consistency, it changes the science, and best to be led by an expert. So thanks so much, Lindsay, for inviting us into your beautiful kitchen today.
Thanks. Yes, as Audrey said, I'm Lindsay Yeakel, Education Program Coordinator at the University of Chicago Celiac Disease Center. And I'm also a classically trained chef. That happened before I started working for the center. I have celiac disease myself. I have a daughter with celiac disease. I have a lot of family with celiac disease. So this is something I've been doing for a long time. I was diagnosed almost 18 years ago. So this is kind of what I've done. So today we're going to do the no-bake Nutella pie, and it's a very kid-friendly recipe. So please don't hesitate to have the kids involved. The only thing that might be a little frustration for the kids is it does get refrigerated for a few hours after you make it, just so it sets up. And you should have all received the recipe in advance. If somebody registered today or late last night, you haven't received it yet, but I'll send it after. Anyhow, so based on the ingredients that are in it, I'm sure you're not surprised to hear it has to be refrigerated for a little while. So part of the reason we're going to do this early today is if anybody's doing this along with us, and sometimes people do, you'll be able to pop it in the fridge and then, this evening be able to eat it. So should be perfect. And I want to point out one of the things that I'm using, and again, in that email that I sent, if you received it, I did specify my no-bake crust that I'm using is the brand Midel. It's a chocolate no-bake crust. This is that's the label from it. I find them at Walmart. So that's part of the reason I felt comfortable using it, is because I know most people have access to Walmart, and typically Walmart has them. So if you're not finding them in your Walmart, you can also order them to be shipped to you. So that's pretty accessible, the Midel chocolate crust. And this is what it looks like, all ready to go. So anyhow,
I'll put the link in the chat box as well. And if anyone has questions along the way, please feel free to put them in the chat box. I'll read them out loud and Lindsay can answer them as she's going.
Yeah, and it can be about this, it can be about other things. I try to help answer some questions about other things as well along the way. And we have kind of a small group today, so I should be able to answer some questions. Anyhow, so we're going to start with, and I have my recipe sitting here. I don't have it memorized. I never like to I don't want to lead anybody to believe I have these things memorized. I don't. And a lot of people think that. They're like, how do you remember all that? And I'm like, I don't. I have my little cheat sheet right here.
You fooled them all, Lindsay. Good job.
And the first thing it says is to take a quarter of a cup. And again, it's a no-bake recipe, so don't get too fancy. You can eyeball that quarter cup if you want and spread it in the bottom. Now this, I would say, be be careful because Nutella doesn't spread as easy as we might want it to, so we don't want to wreck our crust. So we're just going to do the best we can without wrecking that crust. Takes a minute. My daughter was in here earlier and she said, why don't you warm up the quarter cup of Nutella and then spread it? That could happen, but it's a little less no bake once we start messing with that stuff. It's up
Then
to
it just
you.
defeats the purpose.
But yeah, if you warm up that Nutella just a couple of seconds, it probably spread really easily. But we're gonna do the best we can.
Lindsay, we just had a few more people join. So if you didn't join us on the front end, my name is Audrey Rowan. I'm a pediatric dietitian at the University of Chicago for the Celiac Disease Center. And I'm working with Dr. Verma, our celiac disease director, and Rachel Lieberman, our celiac disease director is Rachel Lieberman. And hosting the class here today is Lindsay Yeakel, who's our education coordinator and a certified classically trained chef in all things gluten-free, who she herself has celiac disease, and she's invited us into her kitchen to make a wonderful no-bake Nutella pie.
Yes. So all I've done so far for anybody that just joined is I showed the brand of the crust. That's it.
And it's in the
Mydel
chat.
chocolate snap. Okay. And then I just took a quarter cup of, roughly estimated, quarter cup of the Nutella, spread it on the bottom. Again, be very careful. It's fragile. And then next I'm moving on to preparing the filling. So the first thing that we do is we just take the rest of that Nutella, the whole jar. We're going to put it in our bowl. I think most kids love Nutella, love chocolate in general. So this seems like a pretty kid-friendly dessert to make. Pretty easy for anybody to make, mom and dad, the kids themselves.
And basically you just started with a layer of Nutella at the bottom of the crust. Is that right, Lindsay?
Yeah, I did. And that's why what I was saying, just be careful when you're spreading that around. And honestly, you could skip it too and just put the whole jar into this mix that I'm making and not even bother spreading it on the bottom. Part of the reason they suggest spreading it on the bottom is to kind of form a little bit of a barrier between the filling and the crust to keep the crust from getting too soggy. But this one, it holds up well either way. So, and that's a whole block of cream cheese.
All right.
Whole jar of Nutella, whole block of cream cheese. This is like basically a no measure recipe as well.
And Lindsay, while you're mixing that, we had a question come in. We have someone from Europe joining us. So unfortunately, no Mi del Pie crust here. Can we make it at home using crushed gluten-free cookies and maybe add something to keep it together?
Yes, definitely. You can use any chocolate gluten-free cookie you have available there. And then typically you add a little bit of butter. And so you sort of break up the cookies and then you drizzle in the melted butter and then you can press it into your pie pan. That works great too. Now, in that case, you might need to bake it for maybe 10 minutes or so, just to sort of get it to crisp up and then hold your filling. So in that case, you do have a little bit of baking, but it's very minimal. So yes, absolutely. You can crunch up some sort of cookie, add a little bit of butter, press it into your pan, bake it 10 minutes, and then let it cool and move on with this process for sure.
Great, that'll work.
Okay, so this is going to get noisy because I'm going to use my little hand mixer. You can use a hand mixer. You can use a stand mixer like I have back there. Whatever you have, it works either way. So it'll get noisy. Audrey, you can chat with them.
I just love the color of her standing mixer, that blue back there. Oh my gosh. And for anyone joining us late as well, my name is Audrey Rowan. I'm a dietitian at University of Chicago, working with Dr. Verma and Rachel Lieberman, the director of our Celiac Disease Center. Hosting our class today is Lindsay Yeakel. She's our education coordinator, specialist in all things 504 plans and beyond, and is also a classically trained chef who specializes in gluten-free cooking because she herself has celiac disease as well. And so far, we've got Nutella at the bottom of the crust. We've got the rest of the Nutella in the bowl with a whole block of cream cheese. And so far, this is my kind of recipe.
Yep, so there it is. That's the Nutella and cream cheese mixed together. Very basic, just till it's all combined and smooth. And then the next thing that we're gonna do is we've got Cool Whip. Already, in the container. We thawed it out, and now we're gonna fold that in. And so I start with just some of it and do a gentle fold. And I don't know if you're familiar with how folding works, but you sort of cut through the middle and turn it over, cut through the middle, turn it over. And we just sort of keep doing that process until it's mixed. So it's a really gentle way to combine ingredients. And the idea on this is to keep it fluffy, really. That's kind of mousse-like, fluffy kind of a filling. So we just sort of start that way.
Moira and David could have used you from the TV show, the Schitt's Creek. It says fold. What does fold mean?
That's funny. A lot of people really don't know what folding means. So I started with that small amount just to sort of loosen up and work it in initially, and then I'll sort of put just all the rest of it in and fold it then. But I do like to start with just a small amount first, to help loosen up that original mixture.
And Lindsay, we did have another question come in just now. Is there a Cool Whip type product that is labeled gluten-free? I don't believe the Cool Whip brand is.
So this one that I have is Great Value brand. It's Walmart's, and on it, it says naturally gluten-free product. So it's basically labeled, and like I said, that's the Great Value Walmart brand. And I don't know for sure about the traditional, the brand name brand Cool Whip. I didn't even look at it, so I just happened to get
I'll take a look and see. I'm just noticing now too that the link I sent earlier is not valid for Walmart, but I mean, Walmart is just crushing it with all of their gluten-free options so far.
They do a pretty nice job at this point, that's for sure. And to the person who is in Europe, I don't know that Cool Whip is a thing there. If it's not, heavy cream. This is an 8-ounce container, so we want to end up with 8 ounces of heavy cream whipped to stiff peaks. And you can just use that, and you can sweeten it a little bit because Cool Whip has sweetener. But again, I don't know for sure. It's hard for me to imagine Europe has Cool Whip. So I'm thinking heavy cream and some sugar whipped would get you the same result, healthier. Anyhow, okay, so that's come together. It's still very fluffy. You can see it's a lighter brown now, all mixed together. So again, that's Nutella, the small 13-ounce jar of Nutella, a block of cream cheese, and then the 8 ounces of Cool Whip whipped in there. And then all we do at this point is just load it into our pie crust. Nice and full. Do we have any kids that joined us today?
If anyone has their kiddos with us today, we would love to meet them. So, and to know what we can do to maybe encourage some participation in the kitchen, as long as it doesn't irk mom and dad too much.
I think we find the more kids are involved in cooking, the better that they eat, really. I always had good luck with my kids because I had them involved, and they were, generally speaking, really good eaters. So I don't know. Any kids? Any kids today? maybe all the kids are in school still.
We get that one final week of peace and quiet at home.
All right.
Doesn't look like any kiddos so far,
No
Lindsay.
kiddos. Okay. No problem. Okay, so basically all we do at this point, now that it's all filled, and it really perfectly, it used it all perfectly, just the right amount. Now we would put it into the refrigerator and let it chill. The recipe says for about 4 hours, and that's fairly accurate. You want it to set up nicely so that when you cut into it, it's the shape of a piece of, a piece of pie. If you try to cut into it now, it's probably going to kind of fall, the filling will kind of fall off the crust. So letting it sit in the refrigerator and sort of come to a better texture, so it cuts nicer, is important. So about 4 hours in the refrigerator, and that's that. Now what you can do, once you cut into it, you can serve it as is. You can put a little dollop of whipped cream on top, little drizzle of chocolate syrup, whatever. It's a good base that could be done just as is, or it can be dressed up, maybe some sort of a raspberry sauce drizzled over, or whatever your imagination tells you would be good, is always works. So that's that. Can I answer questions about this, about other things? Anything else I can help with while you're all here?
While people type questions, Lindsay, I have a question. When
Sure.
you put this in the fridge and it's chilled for 4 hours, how long would you say? I mean, I know it kind of depends on the temperature outside, but like, how long would you say a window do you have to like eat a slice before it starts to kind of crumble?
Really, once it's set back up, you would have a decent amount of time. You would definitely have enough time to, cut a piece for everybody and have it sit for, a little bit of time. If you cut it before dinner and it sits out, and then once dinner's done, you eat it, all fine. Half an hour or more, possibly even, would still, it should still hold up pretty well once it's been in the refrigerator for 4 hours.
And we actually just had a question come in, and we had some people join late, so they missed the beginning of the class. Could we have a recording sent?
Yeah. So what we do with all of these cooking sessions that we do is we record them. This one is being recorded as we speak, and we always send a follow-up email that gives you the link to our YouTube channel, right to the recording of this cooking session. So that will be sent to everybody that registered. Probably by the end of the week, you should have that in your inbox.
So no worries, we are on YouTube.
Yes, we are. Lots of things on YouTube. So while we're here and we have you, I would suggest you check out our YouTube anyhow. Pretty much everything that we do, every program, every event, all of the things that we do, generally speaking, if they're done virtually, are recorded and put onto our YouTube channel. So there's lots of goodies on there that you might want to check out. Previous cooking sessions, some of them I do live like this, and some of them I pre-record and we just put straight onto the YouTube channel. So there's other cooking things there as well as lots of educational things too.
We had another one come in. Thank you for sending the link. That way we can make this every year on our birthday.
Oh, perfect plan. Yes.
This is a good, I mean, it could be a good solid. I'm not sure. Can you put candles in there? It's not frozen.
Once it sets up in the refrigerator, you should be able to get some candles to stand in there pretty nicely. Yep.
Hooray, then everybody can have a piece.
That's right. That's right. What other questions can I answer? Something that's totally unrelated, that's, cooking tips or tricks that you might want to know about.
You've got a chef and a dietitian here, so if any questions about food or gluten-free are at the back of your mind, we would be happy to answer them as best we can.
Sure.
For the pediatric patients that I work with, I find that a lot of times if we're doing a certain section of the kitchen gluten-free, compared to the entire kitchen gluten-free, it's up to you kind of how you want to thread that needle. It's a very family-based decision. We don't necessarily recommend that everyone in the house goes gluten-free. Maybe like in the beginning, like at the initial diagnosis, it could be easier for everybody. There's less, we feel included that way, it might just be easier. But honestly, long term, it's pretty expensive to maintain long term. So I actually wonder, Lindsay, the Nutella that you're using, was there something that worked for you when your kids were younger to make sure that there was no double dipping of knives in cross-contamination risk?
Sure, yeah. So most of the time, what we did and the way we handled things, and still do, because there's half of us that are gluten-free and half of us that aren't. So what we typically did when it came to things like the Nutella or butter or peanut butter or things like that that are in a jar, for the most part, what we do is the gluten-free people generally have their own jar. That's the shortest, simplest answer. It could be a little bit more pricey because then sometimes you have two of each thing, but we did that. We had the jar of our own and we would label it on the top with GF, gluten-free, whatever piece of tape that we would then write that on. And so we would know that that was the one that was safe for us and nobody was sort of double dipping in. If you dip into peanut butter, spread it on a piece of bread. Oh, I didn't get enough peanut butter. Let me dip in again. Now that whole jar of peanut butter is considered contaminated, which is why we want to have different containers for the gluten-free and the traditional eaters in the house. So that's how we handled it. You can do other things. Another example, which is a little bit more, you sort of have to trust your people a little bit more on this one, but you can have, say, a jar of mayonnaise, and the gluten eaters would actually take a scoop out of it, put it on into a different container, and then spread from that container. It's an option, but now you're trusting the people to remember to do that process where they're removing it from the main container and using it that way.
Yeah.
It's an option, but again, it's something that you have to figure out if that's something you can trust your family to handle properly for you. So
Yeah.
typically separate containers with labels it's really the safest way to do it. Or squeeze bottles. That's
Squeeze
another
bottles
option.
are a blessing.
Yeah, squeeze bottles are definitely an option. So you can just squeeze it onto whatever and nobody's going in and out of that container, whether it's the gluten-free or the traditional eaters.
Yeah.
So that's an option.
We have a question about flour. How do
Okay.
you know what the best gluten-free flour mix is to use for cookies, breads, crusts, etc.?
That's a tricky question. I can give you the general answer, which is nowadays, a lot of these pre-made flour mixes are really good. They do tend to be pretty good as a one-to-one replacement for a traditional flour. That being said, some people who are really particular about their baking and things like that might prefer to play with making their own blends based on what it is they're making. So something like a muffin or a cake that's kind of a lighter end product is going to need a different mix of flours than something like a pizza crust or a bread or something like that. Different amounts of xanthan gum or guar gum, which is a big thing you use when you bake gluten-free. That's what sort of mimics the protein and the elasticity that traditional flour gives you. So some of those things vary depending on what you're making, but cookies, cakes, muffins, all of those things need a smaller amount of that xanthan gum or guar gum. And then something like bread or pizza or whatever requires a bit more of that. And again, it really, I suggest starting with the pre-made mixes. The one that I use, I can tell you that, is King Arthur's. That's my favorite, but also Bob's Red Mill has a nice all-purpose kind of replacement flour that I've used and I like as well. But my favorite really is King Arthur at this point. So I would suggest start with that, see what you think. Sometimes you need a little bit less flour when you're doing gluten-free because our flours tend to be a little bit drier than a traditional flour. Unfortunately, sometimes you just have to play with it and figure it out as you go and adjust things that way.
Which company is it cup for cup?
Yes, that's another brand. Cup for Cup is one, and I like it as well. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, fun fact. Gluten is derived from the Latin word for glue, meaning the thing that kind of holds everything together. So if there's a summary for how does cooking and baking change when you go from traditional cooking to gluten-free cooking, you're losing a lot of the glue, the elasticity that kind of holds everything together. When a bread rises in the oven and then falls back down, traditionally that's the gluten bonds holding the bread together. So when you're baking without it, you tend to lose that elasticity, and you have to get more creative with how to keep the ingredients together with things like xanthan gum, guar gum, things that sort of keep it together in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we
Exactly.
do have, sorry, Lindsay, we did have another question that's a bit more medically based, which is interesting. We have a daughter who was a very high allergy to gluten, but it did not test positive for celiac. She has autoimmune issues that are common with celiac. Are there current tests available for testing really sensitive enough or reliable enough for a negative diagnosis? Oh boy, do I wish Dr. Verma was here.
Yeah. So because I'm not a doctor and Audrey's not a doctor either, the best thing I can tell you is a couple of thoughts on this. One is absolutely talk to, if you have a gastroenterologist, definitely go to them and talk to them about these things that are happening. The other thing that you may want to do is consider genetic testing to see if your daughter even has the genes for celiac disease. If you've gone through the traditional celiac blood test, it's coming out negative. The next step, if you really feel like maybe she does have it and the test came out wrong, I would maybe suggest the genetic testing, and your gastroenterologist can help with that. They typically know what to request as far as genetic testing goes. But I would definitely talk to your gastroenterologist. If you don't have a gastroenterologist, talk to the primary care, maybe consider seeking out a gastroenterologist that might be able to dive a little bit deeper for you. But unfortunately, Audrey and I really aren't able to give real medical advice other than, maybe sending you on to somebody that can. I'm sorry.
No, but I think that's a great suggestion, Lindsay, because Dr. Burma and I have seen some really sneaky celiac pop up where we know we have the symptoms, but all the tests are coming back negative. Why could this be happening? The genetic marker was kind of a nice, okay, the genetic markers that would predispose someone to have celiac disease are HLA and DQ2. Those are the sequence of the genetic codes that would predispose an individual.
DQ2 and DQ8. Yeah.
DQ2 and DQ8. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. That's See, I'm not a doctor.
Sorry, I have dogs and now
You're fine. DQ2 and DQ8 are the two genetic sequences that they would test for. If those come back positive, then it's, we have the chance to have celiac disease, right? It doesn't always get triggered in people with those genetic codes because for whatever reason, that not everyone with those will get celiac disease. But it might sort of make more sense for your daughter in terms of she has all these symptoms, but the tests keep coming back negative. It might give you some insight. And I will include the information to make an appointment for pediatric gastroenterology at the University of Chicago if you're interested. And just let us know how we can help set you guys up.
And then also, if you're not in the Chicago area, if you're near another one of the celiac centers, that's always a great option, to see one of those. But again, if you're seeing a primary care pediatrician, any of those things, talk to them about it, see if they can refer you on to a GI doctor in your area that maybe knows about celiac, if you don't already have one.
She said, thank you. The recommendation was perfect. It's our pleasure, Michelle. It can be really difficult sometimes to manage. So thank you for your question. Any other questions or concerns? I don't have any coming through. Out of morbid curiosity for myself, Lindsay, what kind of dogs do you have?
Dogs. I have a full-blooded boxer And then I have, yeah, she's 5. And then I have another one that we rescued last summer, and he's only 1. And he's, we're not positive, but he appears to be a combination of American Foxhound, and it looks like there's a touch of pit bull in him, but not much.
Beauty. Do they get along okay?
They do. Yeah, for the most part, they do. One's male, one's female. I think that helps.
Nice. Perfect. We're not having any other questions
Okay.
come through. Oh, excuse me, I spoke too soon. Yes, lastly, is the YouTube channel link in the email? I'd love to check out more recipes.
In the follow-up email that I send after, I will include the YouTube link in there. So basically what happens is once that we're done here, that the recording of this has to upload, I have to go through a process of getting it onto YouTube. And once it's there, then I'll send the follow-up email with the link directly to it. But from that link directly to it, you'll also be able to access everything else that we have on our YouTube channel. So if you just give me a couple of days, that email will come to your inbox. Whatever email address you registered with is the one that will get the follow-up email.
Beautiful. So it looks like we're on last call for any questions or comments or anything about the recipe or gluten-free or cooking in general. Last call for questions in the chat.
Well, I think that's it then. Thank you. Appreciate everybody that came. And we do these about 4 times a year, the live ones. So look for emails and social media posts and things like that about them. And there'll be more coming eventually.
We had a comment. This was great. Nice to know I'm not alone in the struggle. Thank you from the Netherlands.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you for joining us. I can't imagine what time it is there. We appreciate you being here.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Have a
Thank
great
you for
day.
joining us, everyone. Have a great day.